Hello, and welcome to episode 112 in this series where I am programming an NES game from scratch. Let's get started. It's been about a week since we were away from this, and I wanted to do live streaming last week, but unfortunately, it seems like hotel Wi-Fi is pretty terrible in general, so I was having a hard enough time just doing normal things, and it just didn't seem like streaming would actually work for at least coding related tasks. If you in the future want me to do any streaming that's not coding related, where we just talk about programming, or you ask me questions about the NES and programming on the NES directly, where I can just kind of focus on that, let me know. Getting back into this, basically where we're at right now is that we were working on, getting this whole switching back and forth between the normal map mode and the scrolling mode and the repeat scrolling mode, and we were having some weird issues with that whole thing, specifically with the attributes not being updated properly, and then there was also a problem with you'll see here that the ship jumps when we do the switch. So let's take a look at all of this here. I'm going to try and keep this one short because it's relatively late here for me. Got started late, and I'm hoping I can just kind of bang out some of these things real quick. But that's what I say in a lot of these episodes, and it doesn't happen. So the ship jumping like that, let's take a look at why that would happen. So when we're changing over to our repeat scroll mode, we're adjusting the ship position. And yeah, so we're changing the camera position, and we're adding to the position of the player, but it is adding the wrong value. We hard-coded the map value here that we were adding for the camera. Let's put a note here. When updating the player entity, we should be mindful of the camera value above. So you can see we're adding 1B1 to the entity world position, and that's not correct because the camera position is now at 1E1. So let's fix that. So that should fix that weird jump, which I don't think I was noticing before because I think the ship was just crashing every time. So if we avoid this here, and then we're going to get to the point where we hit repeat scroll, the ship. Okay, cool. So it didn't do that jump. So that was easy enough to do. Now, the other problem we're seeing is once again with attributes, my favoritist thing. And so I was kind of taking a look at this before we got started just to try and figure out what's going on. And what you can see is, if we pause this, these attributes here at the bottom are wrong, and these attributes at the top are wrong also. But these attributes are actually correct for these tiles. And that's because what's happening is we're updating the attribute index for the name table as if we were updating the name table above, which is what we're supposed to have been doing, but it looks like we never actually updated this. Let's rewind here for a second because I'm kind of curious to see what that looks like here. If I can So right now it's okay, and then we update this row here. The attribute index is updated correctly, but then it's updating the wrong name table. Oh, right. Didn't we... I think we talked about this. So, if I remember, I did mention something about this in the last stream. And let's see. So where we update? So we're updating the attribute index attributes here with attribute buffer, but we're hard coding the address 2BC0 in 2006, which would mean which means that we're only updating the bottom attribute table, which is not correct. So what we need to do... Oh, wait a minute. Well, no, we're not. Are we updating... Huh. Do we have this the wrong way? Is the logic here reversed for some reason, or is it just some other bug? Let's take a look. Because what we're doing is we're checking the value of swap. Swap is what determines which name table we're offsetting the scroll by. And based on the value of swap, we're determining which address we're setting up for the name table update, either 23C0 or 2BC0. And what should be happening is we should be updating 23C0 here. It's possible that also we're slightly out of sync when we do that update, and so it's going to be right for that one row, and then it'll be all wrong. And let's see. Whoa, okay, that's weird. That... How did that break that? Okay, this was... Go back to this. Go back to this. Reload. Come on. Well, okay, so the updates are not happening in the wrong name table, at least. At least not after the transition over. So what gives? Because what we should be seeing is that once we start updating that, swap, let's take a look at the debugger and look at scroll Y. I know I had it there and deleted it, but I just want to clear everything out. So scroll Y is 0, and swap is 2, which means that, let's see, and 2 branch if not equal. So if it's set, then 2, and then we get what? We go to here into 2BC0. So that didn't get updated yet, even though that's okay. So why is that? Let's reverse for a second here. Stop. What are you? Oh, this is a bad breakpoint. You're gonna reverse. Let's just redo this slowly. So far we're okay. You know what? Let's break on when we do the change for the swap. How about that? Let's switch over to our actual code view. Load a swap and to branch not equal. No, that's too far already. Where is that code? Oops. This is... $696. Let's see, what can we search for? Let's do story swap. Here. So this is when we detect that the camera's rolled over. We're going to load swap and flip the bit and then store it back. So let's get the game running again. Okay, so it's 2-0. Let me go to where we're processing the attribute 2B. C0. So this is where we would be doing that. So let's do that. All right, so if we step through, we're going to flip the value of swap over. Oh, but it doesn't force an attribute update. So because it's not forcing the attribute update at that point, it doesn't get the right palette values. So can I force that here? Let me see. Load 1 and then store that into metatile flag. I believe that we just increment that when we're doing attributes. So we don't want to do that anymore. Repeat attribute, jump, repeat attribute update. Skip repeat attribute update. Okay, so we increment. So we want metatile flag to have a value of 1. So instead of doing the increment like we're doing here, we're going to load A with 1. We're going to OR it on metatile flag and then store it back because we just want bit 1 set. Okay, so let's see if that forces a reload of the attributes at that point. Those breakpoints are no longer valid, most likely. I don't remember if I... Okay, so let's see, 2B. And actually just search for V blank and then find where we're doing that check. Metafile flag, and that's for the tile row, and then this is load metatile flag and 1, compare 1, branch if equal. Yeah, so that's where we're doing the load of the attributes, and then for the scrolling, here's where we're going to do the swaps. Swapsies. Okay, so where is Messon's main window? Why am I not seeing it? There it is. Okay. Okay, so we hit start, go into the game, and scroll Y. will be decremented until we get to the breakpoint. Swap is 2. Wait, why is scroll Y 0? Oh, because we're updating the attributes here. Not doing what I thought. Okay, so... so it's actually... I see. So the problem... Okay, so let's take a look at this, though, for a second. And the tile flag should be 0 right now. It is. Am I zeroing it out somewhere else after that? I mean, the bigger issue I realize now is that even if I'm setting this properly, repeat scroll. Oh, it's going to repeat scroll mode, which is clearing. Okay, so it's repeating the whole. All right. So it's not even. It's not even this that I want to adjust. The problem is. Leave that alone. So the problem is that we are updating screen memory. If we pause for a second here, we're updating screen memory. We've written the whole screen at 2800, 2800, and all the way down. So now we're updating meta tiles starting at 23A0. We should be updating the attributes for that name table, but instead we're updating the attributes here because we haven't swapped the camera position yet. And we're updating the row. So it's almost like we've got to track that separately. We're going to track that separately from the updates to the scrolling position. The attribute updates I'm just trying to think of how we could do that. You know, maybe we could do that based on the screen mem position, because the screen mem position tells us which name table we're in, right? If it's in the range of 2000 to 23A or 23BF or whatever that range is, then we want to be updating the name table starting at 23C0. Yeah, so 23BF is the max range for that. If it's within 2800 to whatever that, I can't type. If we're in that other range, then we want to be, yeah, so if it's within 2800 to 2B, 2B? Oh, that range I gave before was wrong, but that's okay. You get what my point is. My point is that depending on the range that the screen mem is in, that would determine which update we want to use. So maybe what we can do is we can look at the first byte of screen mem and use that to determine which name table we're updating with the attributes. So for example, Yeah, I kind of like that approach. Let's see. So if we load screen mem, and then clear carry, actually I'm going to do a subtract. What I'm going to do is I'm going to subtract 28 from it. And if the carry is still set, then the value of screen mem is 28 or higher. And if it's clear, then it's 20 or higher. It's in this range. So by doing the subtract, we can say, okay, branch if carry is set to, I don't want this. Branch if the carry is set, meaning it's greater than or equal to 28. 28. That'll give us this. Otherwise, we're here. Let's see. That might work. And then this way, we don't have to rely on the value of swap. We're just, wherever we're updating the memory, we're going to know that that's where, or sorry, the name table, that's where we will know that we need to update the attributes as well. All right, so let's take a look at that. Let's see how that looks. What you doing? Let's get rid of this. Why is this just slow? Yep, it's just slow. Okay, let's bring back up the PPU viewer. There we go, that's looking good. So we're getting attribute updates in the right place now. That was a simple swap, and what's nice is you can see the bottom name table still looks right. The ship was destroyed by phantom collision data, I think. So now we're still having this problem where we're updating after repeat scroll mode starts. We've got the wrong updates here. What is this data? This data is probably just random data that's left in the name table. Here, let's take a look at this again for a second. Just want you to see what I was talking about with the name tables being correct. You can see the bottom of the screen no longer had the wrong colors because we're not updating in the wrong way there. And now as we scroll, everything's looking good. That is exciting. That means that it's going to look good even with the overscan turned off. All right, so let's take a look at this. So when we make this swap over to repeat scroll mode, it should be updating not only the name table with the background updates, but also with attribute updates. So let's look at why this would be wrong. Oh, I paused it in the game and instead of pausing the emulation, so let's make sure I've got that done properly this time. Okay, so I want to slow this down and look at what kind of attribute updates we're seeing. I assume, so we just did a bunch of updates there, but I expect that that's probably just us updating. Well, it seems like an awful lot to strange that it's changing so much when we've already basically changed, just through the process of scrolling, we've changed the attribute table there to match what's on the bottom. So I don't know why we'd be seeing so much. Oh, you know, I guess it's possible because it is partially updating it. But that's weird. That's a lot of... So just in case you're not following what I'm saying, the yellow... Um, the yellow tiles are attribute updates. And you can see that when we get to this point, there's an attribute update here, and then there's a big one that happens here, which is unusually large amount of updating. It's almost like I wonder if we're updating this row in the name table, in the attribute table, instead of this one, and then that one. Well, how many did we update? We updated both. Even though it doesn't look like they really... So let's think about what's going on here and see if we can figure it out. So when we get to the position where this is checking if we're in background mode or repeat scroll mode. Let's see. So at some point we check the camera position. Where is that? Okay, so if we... Right, so here is where we're switching to repeat scroll mode. So... Oh, right, and we're checking to see if we are in map mode or if we're in repeat scroll mode, because we'll switch back and forth. Swap to repeat scroll mode. So we're checking the screen mem, and then we're changing to repeat scroll mode. BG meta. Okay, we're setting up the background meta tile stuff. Changing the camera position and the entity position. We're moving scroll Y back 1 to set everything back up to process the repeat scroll again. I guess if we'd gotten to the point where the camera was 0, I wonder if we are processing a row that is invalid first, and then overwriting that with our actual repeat scroll row. Because, let's see. Well, it should be easy enough to check in the code. I'm wondering when we get to the end if we're processing whatever is past the level data. And then that is what's causing... Am I in the wrong file? Oh, for heaven's sake. What's going on? That's attribute mode. Where are the map mode constants? Oh, it's called background mode. You'd think I'd know this, right? Swap to repeat scroll. So let's take a look at what had happened before that. Let's disable the breakpoint. And just back up a little bit and hit the breakpoint. Okay, so we're at the point where scroll Y is A0 because it's at this position, and that makes sense. Swap is 0. Meta tile flag is 3, so it's gonna it thinks it should load a row of tiles and update the attributes. So my guess is that what's happened is that attribute index is wrong, or at least wrong for our purposes right now. Let's see, so 69 in hex. Really? That's... That is too large. Right? Because the attribute index shouldn't exceed 4.0, well, 3.8 really. Unless I'm not thinking clearly. It's only 64 bytes, so what happened there? Did we subtract too far? Load attribute index. New attribute buffer row. Load attribute index, subtract 16, compare it to F8, branch if not equal, otherwise make it 3.8. Alright, let's get rid of this breakpoint. Let's take a look at what's happening here, because that's strange. Okay. Well, oh, that's the address. Oh. Oops. 2.0. That makes more sense. So it's halfway through the attributes. If we go back to the attribute grid, that doesn't seem right though. Oh, actually, maybe it does. Let's think about that. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, and that's the end of the name table. So that's 1, 2, 3. Yeah, I guess that's okay. Okay, so that would explain why it's updating all of this here, because what we were seeing was all of that getting updated to that point, right? Well, or it was here. Okay. Still higher than expected. I may have just miscounted. So if we back up a second here. Rewind, please. All right, so what we need to do is we need to figure out if attribute index needs to change, let's see, how would we figure that out? If it's 2, 0, it's 32. Each of these are, wait, are they 8 by 8 or 16 by 16? These are 16 by 16, so this is row 1, this is row 2, or, you know, go by offset index value rather than, I don't know, it doesn't matter. So this is 1, this is 2, this is 3, let's see, and then so the offset into that, because it's 8, we should probably count that instead of the rows. This would be at attribute index 0, then attribute index 8, attribute index 16, attribute index 24, and attribute index 32, and then it's probably updating this bottom part first, but that's not right. It should be over here updating the top part. So and it's updating the, let's see, the lower nibble is the upper part of the attribute index. Dev wiki yeah, so it's the top part is the lower nibble. So it is updating the top part, so it should be this that it's updating right here, which is correct. We've got the right attribute mode. I'm still not 100% sold on this attribute index. This is actually doing the update. Well, no, it's not. It's, what is it doing? Loading metatal flag, checking if it's going to be updating the attributes. If it is, it, let's see, compares if it's bottom half or top half. If it's equal, new attribute buffer row. So it loads the attribute index and subtracts 16, and then compares if it went too far. Why 16? So over here, take the attribute index, load the buffer value, and it with the attribute mode, and then take the value and potentially shift it into position properly, depending on which mode we're using, and then it will do an OR with temp and store that into attribute buffer X, and then increment attribute index. And so it will do that, how many times? I guess it does that however many times it's got to write a new tile, which is 16. but that's 16 across for our meta tiles because we're doing 16 by 16 meta tiles. So once we're done with that, right, so depending on if we're updating bottom half, then the bottom half is the top of the attribute block, so we're going to subtract eight from the we're going to subtract 8 and then what? And then store that in attribute index. So let's do this. It could be either one of these that's getting called right now before. Let's disable these. Pause this. So we're not quite there yet, so let's keep running. Okay, so attribute index is 2.8. We're subtracting right, because we are currently, because we had updated the upper portion of the attribute table, so now we got to switch back to the bottom portion. For the next row. So we're subtracting 8 to go. Oh wait, are we updating? Did we update this and now we're updating that? So it'll be lower portion and then upper portion. I'm just trying to figure out which mode we're transitioning from. So we're transitioning from updating the upper nibble, the most significant nibble, to the least significant nibble. So we're going from the bottom to the top. So by doing that, that's why we're subtracting 8, because we're just updating that same row. Right, because we're just switching between updating the portion of the nibble that we're at. So this will subtract the attribute index back to that same, the beginning of the same row. And then we're looking at the mode and we're swapping it. So, I mean, that should be okay. Unless I mess something up in repeat scroll processing in as far as how the attributes get updated now. So let's do this. Let's get rid of those and process the repeat scroll mode now. That would be this. So now we're in this mode, right? And attribute, okay, so So we're telling setting the metatile flag to reload a new row of data. And where are we dealing with the attributes? Here, metatile flag. Temp attribute mode. So let's walk through this. So we know we should be updating the lower portion of the byte, right? The lower nibble. I want to skip past dealing with all this stuff because it's not super important to what we're doing right now. That's the portion we're interested in, is the metatile attribute update. So, okay, so we're going to load the metatile, and then we're going to subtract 1 to get the actual attribute value. And then we're going to store that in temp, which now has the value 0. And then we're going to do some shifts, and then we're going to OR that with temp, which is already 0. We're going to store that. The reason we did that was we took the value and we loaded it up into the lower portion of the nibble, right? So if the value were 1, we would have stored 1 in temp and then shifted 1 over 2 places and then OR'd those two things together to get to get the bits 0, 1, 0, 1, which is what we would want. In this case, it's just all zeros. And then we're going to take the attribute mode and compare it to see if we have to shift again. Now we shouldn't do the shift again because we've got everything in the right place already. So now we're going to get the attribute indexed into X for the purposes of why is that 2, 0? Wasn't it 2, 8? That's weird. I could swear that it was 2, 8 when we flipped over to repeat scroll mode. Let's double check that, because I could just be misremembering because I'm tired. But I don't know 100%. Let's disable these again. And then swap to repeat scroll. Attribute index is 2, 0. I think I can step backwards, right? Step back, Shift F10. So it was 2, 8. Okay, that's what I was remembering. So it was 2, 8, and we made it 2, 0 because we had incremented by 8. So we needed to go back to 2, 0. Okay. So that's fine then. So if we then step to here where we're swapping, it's 2, 0. That's okay. Come back into here, it's 2, 0. Then we should have a breakpoint here where we're processing this stuff. Okay, so load attribute index into X, transfer X to A. Why are we doing that? Why are we adding 8? That's not correct. Oh, okay, because that's... I always forget about that. Because we do this a little bit differently. We calculate where the end is based on just adding 8 to it, so that's okay. Because we don't increment attribute index here. So temp2 now has 2, 8, and X has 2, 0. So now we're going to load the attribute buffer at this position. We're going to take the attribute mode and AND it, and so we get 7, 0. Which, let's see if that looks right. If we go back to this, the attribute value... The attribute value here it's 5 and 0. What's 7? What's 7, 0? Attribute buffer. Where do we have 7? I don't even know. I don't even know. Do you know? That doesn't make sense because that is not a valid sort of value here. Attribute buffer is at address 0. So 7A. Where did 7A come from? That, oh, okay. So I think it's weird. But so if five zero. So it should be 2, 8. But somehow the logic is wrong here. Because what we should be doing is updating this 5, 0 to be 5, 5. But instead we're here in this row. I wonder if it's like I said, we processed some data that is bogus for the map when we hit the end there, because the camera position is now 0. And it messed everything up. Yeah. So, okay. So what we want to do we not want to do this here? This is swap to map mode. Trying to think of how would we want to do this. I guess we would want to do this in the beginning of the update rather than at the end, because we're loading junk into memory. I mean, the other thing we could do, just thinking about this for a minute here, if we didn't want to disrupt this completely, we could increment the attribute index but then the swap, we have to swap the mode back. Sorry, I'm just kind of considering what's going to be less messy. Let's try that. Let's see what that looks like. So what we would want to do is we'd want to load attribute index, clear the carry, add 8 stored in attribute index, and I know that that is potentially problematic, but actually it won't be too hard to fix. So we'll end that with let's see, 64 is 40, so we want to end that with 3F, so that if we exceed that value, we roll back over to 0. And then load a metatile mode, no, what is it, attribute mode, Eor FF, swap that back to what it was before we loaded that junk row, and then try again, essentially. This will be interesting to see how that works. Let's see if this is even close. Okay, so we switch to repeat scrolling mode. Let's take a look. And fingers crossed. Oh, I gotta hit. Let me just close the debugger right now. No. So what did it actually do when I made that update? Let's see. So that updated the bottom. It updated, I guess, this portion. So it updated this attribute row incorrectly. Still. If the camera is 0, you know, one thing I didn't look at, I assumed that it had updated. I had made an assumption about what it was doing before it got in there, rather than actually looking. Let's take a look at the state of things before we get in there. So the debugger. Swap to repeat scroll mode. So the attribute index is 2.0. Attribute mode is F0. Scroll Y is A0. Metatile flag is 3.0. So yeah, it's saying, okay, we're going to update the entire, we're going to update the row and the attributes. Where's that diagram here? So if we for a second take, if we take the attribute index value, which is 20, and add C0, we get E0, which puts us where? Here. And we're saying we were updating the lower nibble. So that would be the upper quadrant piece here. Or rather, that's the next update that has to be done. Right? Because when we go through the code, we do our update, and then we say, based on what you're currently doing, swap attribute mode and either subtract 16 or subtract 8 and swap. So we had looked before and we were subtracting 8 and swapping, so we had done this, and then we were going back to this E0 and we were doing the top here. And if we look at the PPU viewer, we've updated the bottom with 5 and the top is 0. So I guess the real weird thing then is that when we go back in, what are we doing? In repeat scroll mode, what are we doing? With the attribute index. So this is just prepping the attribute update we want to do, and then we're just taking the index and but it's wrong. I mean, that's just, it's wrong, because if we go into the memory and we look at the attribute index offset, you're going to open the memory, please. Thank you. In the debugger, we can see that attribute mode is, no, attribute index is 20. And if we go to 20, that puts us here. Instead of here, which is where I feel like we want it to be. Right, but we've already done that. I'm just like perplexed by how this logic is behaving right now. Because essentially, what I feel like is that we should be here. Right? If we look at the data in the PPU viewer, this is, although at the same point, well, we haven't updated the attributes here with the wrong values yet, so I guess the point is that we shouldn't be trying to update the map if the camera value is 0, just for the sake of the consistency, and then trying to backtrack, it's kind of weird. So let's see. So let's go back to the top here, process map mode. Let's for argument's sake say we're putting it here. Where is that code down here? It is in skip row process. So let's say that we detect that the camera is 0. We don't have to do anything. We just have to jump to skip row process, because we know that processing the next row is going to be bogus. It's just going to be junk data from the map, or from the ROM, not map data. And so at that point we should just swap to processing the row mode, and swapping row mode. So skip row process is here. So swap to repeat scroll is over here. Let's just run this and take a look at what happens. Oh, good. I messed that up, didn't I? Camera wrench. Oh, yep. Should be branch if not equal. Wait. Branch if equal to here. Compare to 0, branch if equal to this. Compare to equal, branch if equal to this. Yeah, I've got the wrong thing here. I don't know. Proceed with map mode. And then if it's 0 for both, then we're gonna jump to skip scroll row process. That's what I get for just copying and pasting and not really looking at what I was doing. Alright, so that looks better, but it's not 100% right, because now the problem is that it's updating screen memory at the wrong position. I mean, and that's an easy enough fix, because that we can actually do swap to repeat scroll. So what we need to do is offset screen mem by 32 bytes. 32 bytes? Yeah. Because that never happened when we updated with the bogus memory. So loading screen mem. +1. Set carry, subtract 32, which is 20. Store a screen mem +1. Branch carry clear. No, carry set to this Otherwise, we need to decrement screen mem. So if we subtract 32 and the carry is still set, we're good. Otherwise, we gotta decrement a screen mem properly. I think that's right. Let's see. Okay, there's repeat scroll mode happening now correctly with the attributes. Let's go back to... we still get weird collisions happening because it's looking at the memory. All right, so now... excuse me. So now what's happening is we are in a situation where, okay, we're almost done here. We've almost got this working as far as switching to repeat scroll mode. So let's take a look at this here. So what's happening is when we flip over to the lower name table, it looks like we're updating stop for a second. Let's rewind. I think what's happening... So we're updating the attributes of the... We're updating the attributes in the lower name table now correctly. The attribute index... Oh, is it the wrong attribute mode because it's the bottom row in repeat scroll? That would make sense. I don't know that we accounted for that. So let's see. Process repeat scroll mode. Okay, so if the... Let's go here. So we are subtracting the attribute index. Branch carry set, skip. Okay, so we're not... Okay, cool. So we're not handling this part properly. What we need to do is we need to load A with the attribute mode and flip the bit and store it back, because when we roll over to 3.8 in hex, that's putting us at the bottom here, which is the half row, which is the top portion. So that could be all it is, and that would be kind of cool. I mean, that's definitely wrong the way we're doing the update, I'm pretty sure. So let's see. One thing I noticed is when we're swapping between the title screen and processing the map, we are seeing a weird artifact that's probably due to us not turning off drawing properly when switching. What is going on? Now it wasn't updating attribute mode attributes at all. How is that possible? Just by making that change. The change I made was subtract. Compare. Oh. compare branch if not equal to that. That subtracts 16. Okay. I mean, that should be okay. So branch if not equal to skip repeat attribute, update, load a attribute index, subtract 8, stored in attribute index. Branch if carry is set to skip, meaning that we didn't roll back over. Load 3.8, load the attribute mode. Actually, we don't even want to do that. We want to top half. That's line 827. So top half is 827. So we just want to actually load it and then store it into attribute mode. Oh, this is dumb. So I was doing sort of the right thing, but then I was also modifying A, which had 38 in it, so I wasn't updating the index, and that was making it do dumb things, and I was doing something stupid. All right, let's try it again. This should work much better this time. At least it should update the attributes at the bottom here, even if it's not 100% correct, but let us see. The emulation speed has no effect right now. Nope, that did not work. Okay. Let me close messin because it seems like it's getting messed up. Just want to confirm that it, in fact, didn't work. Because messin was actually acting pretty strange. It wasn't doing anything with my emulation speed at all. So I don't even know if it reloaded the ROM. Let's see. Okay, it looks like that didn't do it. So what the heck? Top half. So actually what I mean is bottom half. I'm gonna come up with a name that actually makes sense and isn't confusing here at some point, and then attributes will be done and it won't matter. All right, come on, this has got to work. Nope. Why? Oh, because somehow I got rid of that again. Probably because I'm tired. I'm just doing dumb things now. This is why rest is important. I think I've said that before. But let this be a living lesson. There we go. Why did it miss that one row? It's 38 and it'll be updating the bottom half. Let's take a look at this, because that is pretty strange if you ask me. So attribute mode is F0, which means that we are keeping the upper portion, discarding the bottom portion. The attribute index is 30, which puts us here. So the bottom portion is the upper portion of the tile. Why is that? Back up for a second here. So we're about to do the update. The attribute mode is F0. Where is this code? Oh. Really, check screen mem? Really? You're not updating attribute index though. So I almost feel like that's probably not a good thing that I'm doing that there. Like, just let the code handle that. Now watch, this is going to break something else, right? Because wouldn't that just be the way? I hope I'm wrong. I hope that that doesn't break anything, but we'll find out in a moment. Okay, so far that's looking normal. Or at least the way that I want it to. I think that got it. It looks like that got it. So now the question is, if we switch back to the map mode, will this work? All right, so we can already see there's a problem with the attributes being off, but that's not terrible under the circumstances. That actually looks all correct otherwise. Oh. That was an interesting little bit of weirdness. Let's see if it switches back to repeat scroll properly now. I think it's going to be off because the attributes are... the attribute processing is off. But under the circumstances, I think it's actually, if we restart here, let's just take a look real quick here. So it's actually not too bad. So the problem right now is we're going in swap to map mode. So what are we doing? We're swapping to the map mode, we're loading the level. So screen mem should be at the right position. But the attribute index, the attribute index will have been incremented, so, or decremented. Well, will it have been? Whatever row it's on and whatever mode it's on would determine what would need to happen. So if it had updated a upper part of the nibble, which is the lower part of the attribute, then it would need to, although I feel like it should already be in that mode correctly. Because it would have updated and been set. Let's just take a look at the code and see what it's doing. Swap to map mode. I think I'll probably just leave this for next time. We're really close. Things are looking pretty good. Camera is about to hit this. Okay. So attribute mode is set to update the bottom nibble, which is the top portion. Attribute index is at 20, which puts us where? 20. That plus C will give us E0, so that would be here. And we're setting that, so what we should see is that let's see, E0. Let's just let it run one cycle to so it updated the attributes here, which is wrong. I don't even know why that would have occurred. Why is... That's weird. What's going on with the scroll being down here? Is it just based on... Is it just based on the scan line that I'm checking it at? No. Why can't it show me? Why is that? Why is the scroll all the way at the bottom? 8D. What is 8D? $141. If that's 240 down here, 141 is, yeah, I mean 120 would be right in the center, so what? I guess something in the scroll register is being incorrectly updated. I guess the other thing we could do is, it looks like what's happening, you know what it probably is? It's probably that the camera is repeating in a way, or is set up in a way that, I think I talked about this one other time. We can just try this real quick, but it's not fitting into a full set of metatiles. So 1E1 is 480. 1E0 divided by 16. That's 15. Let's do 16 times 16 and get 1E4, make this 1E5. Because what I'm wondering is if we are, because of where we're, well, I don't know if it updated. Let's back up for a second here. I don't know if it updated a fully drawn yeah, so it's like we needed another 8 pixels added. Because it updated that row before it had fully revealed that last meta tile. Or maybe it didn't. Maybe that is the last. I guess that's the last meta tile, and so it should be updating now at 2260. 2280. That's where it's at right now. And then it processes repeat scroll. You know what? This is probably the same thing as with the... Yeah, okay. So what's happening here is the same thing as processing the map mode, which is essentially that the camera's at 0. Processes at 0, or the camera's at 0, and so realistically it shouldn't try and draw that next mode, that next row or half row for the repeat scroll. So let's do this. Let's subtract from the camera like we've been doing, and then check the position and say proceed with map render is our point that we're jumping to, and then if it's 0, we're going to skip the row process and then reset the mode and then come back. And we'll do that for both modes because in both cases it makes sense that we don't want to draw the next row from that particular mode, but instead for the next mode that we're switching over to. So are we in? Yeah, we're at max speed. So okay, so that swapped over correctly. Let's see if this swaps back now. Take a look at the camera. Got a little ways before it switches over. Although, well, it's fine. Huh. The attributes are still wrong. No, it actually fired the enemies there. Did I change? I did change that. I guess it doesn't matter because it's the same, but what? Let's see. Let's just check this breakpoint again, and then I'm going to call it a night because I am done. So I just want to see what it does when we hit that. Let's rewind here for a moment. You know what, it might be even... It's going to be faster to just go back through the code again. It's weird. It's like having the debugging windows open seems to cause sort of a leak in resources or something. And so then the emulation speed changes don't actually do anything. Okay, let's see what happens when it swaps back. before we do that, I want to see. It had run. Let's see. So the camera is 1, and we're subtracting 1 from it, so it is now 0. So now it's totally 0, so skip row process. It's double checking that here. I guess that's an extraneous check, but that's okay for now. Load the background mode, and we're swapping to map mode. So, excuse me, so 2260 is where? It's here. And I think that's right. I think that's where we wanted it to be. Attribute index is 20. Attribute mode is F0 because we're retaining the upper byte and setting the lower byte. Or sorry, nibble. The scroll is somewhere over here. It'd be good if I could see the actual Y coordinate so that I can see where the scroll is supposed to be. Not where it's showing it to me on here. All right, so we do all that stuff. We go to, oh, initialize sprites. Really? That seems wrong. Yeah, it should jump back to gameplay state. Why? I don't know why it's going to initialize sprites. That's weird. I commented that out at some point, but I couldn't tell you why anymore. So it seems like running the Lua really slows down things here. Getting there. All right, let's see how we're doing. Okay, so that resets things and then brings us back to processing the map. Still wrong. Still wrong. All right, I'm gonna call it for tonight. We got most of it working, and I'm just too tired to do anymore because it's these subtle little things. There's obviously something going on where we're updating the PPU and causing the scroll register to be in a weird spot. Maybe some other PPU updates causing this problem. We gotta look. But anyway, that'll be for next time on the live stream. As always, thank you for watching. If you have any comments or questions, you can reach me on Twitter at Clairvis. You can also comment on this recording on YouTube. I'll try to get back to you as soon as I can. Glad to see that these videos are helpful. I will be picking up on the Zero Pages episode 5 on backgrounds coming up real soon. If you want to reach me on Nintendo Age, I'm Zelius. I'm on the Discord too, and there are a bunch of other NES programmers on there as well. Feel free to hop in and say hi and ask questions. And as always, thanks for watching, and I'll see you next time. Take care.